Good afternoon, everybody. This is Lieutenant Adbury from the Lobo Battalion. Go Lobos. Today I have a very special guest, Zak Mercado, Captain, retired from the U.S. Army Reserves. He graduated and commissioned in May of 2013. He then started his career as an Army Reserves engineer officer, serving in various units throughout the Southwest. And then he mobilized in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. From there, he joined the FBI in 2015 and then continued serving from there. Zak, again, we really appreciate you being able to meet with us and talk about your journey. Could you start off by talking about a little bit about your origin story? Where did you grow up in New Mexico? What schools did you go to? Stuff like that.
Yeah, of course. No, I'm glad I could interview with you today. It's always great to reconnect with the UNM Army ROTC. So my childhood, I grew up here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Had a typical childhood. What was atypical about that is that both my parents were Albuquerque Police Department officers, and that's where I was first introduced to service to your community, right? Putting service before self. So that was instilled in me from a very early age. And that transitioned into, my early childhood and adolescence, where I was always a member of a team, played team sports, played baseball. And those two tenets put together kind of pointed me in the direction of service in our armed forces. When I was a younger child, I had ambitions of becoming a pilot and flying fighter jets like most little kids want to do. But as it developed in me, this desire to do more, I quickly realized that maybe that's just not for me. Maybe I really like working with people and being a member of a team instead of solo up there in a plane in the sky. So that's what kind of inspired me to pursue a career in the Army. That coupled with a grandfather of mine who served in the Army Air Corps during World War II. He was a strong inspiration for my aspirations to join the Army and serve our nation.
That's really awesome. I guess another thing is, it was only your grandfather who pretty much motivated you, or was there anybody else that served in the military?
Yeah, so I had a lot of extended family members who served in various branches of our military, but I would say that maternal grandfather of mine, he was the direct inspiration for me. He was, in my eyes, a war hero. He flew combat sorties for the Army Air Corps aboard a B-24 Liberator as a nose gunner, and just hearing stories about him from my grandmother and my mother was just a real inspiration. Unfortunately, he passed away before I was born, so I never had this opportunity to meet him. But he was always this mythical figure, right? In my early childhood, he was always this hero of mine. A gentleman who, straight out of high school, in the sleepy town of Albuquerque, volunteered to defend his country during World War II, and that was just something that was really amazing to me. As a young man, seeing his level of courage and his willingness to serve and place himself in danger, a huge motivator for me and a huge example for me as a young man growing up.
Yeah, definitely. I totally could see from your perspective, wanting to live up to a legacy, things like that. I think a lot of our students are interested in that too. Just their family has served, and so it's like they want to do something more with their life. But what high school did you attend while you were now, like, as growing up?
So I moved around a bit all throughout my life, and that was no different during my childhood. So my father, he was a special agent himself with the FBI. His first office was El Paso, Texas, and that's where I attended high school. So I attended Franklin High School in El Paso, Texas, and that was also another key factor that kind of pushed me towards service, because I grew up during my teenage years on the doorstep of Fort Bliss, and I saw my community members, my teammates on the track team, the upperclassmen that I went to school with, volunteering to support our efforts in Iraq and Afghanistan, and seeing their example and seeing their service was a huge factor in me finally deciding to join the Army versus any other branch, because that was really the only basis for firsthand knowledge, right? I grew up seeing these soldiers mobilized from Fort Bliss, seeing First Armored take up residency there at Fort Bliss. It was my only opportunity to really be exposed to it, because members of my immediate family, while they served in various capacities in law enforcement, they were never members of any military organization.
Okay. Yeah. I guess another part of that I was wondering is, so it seems like you had tons of motivators back then, family, and then just your surroundings. But what ultimately pushed you to go to college and not just go enlist?
Yeah, so I'd have to thank my father for that, right? When you're a young man, you're all courage and no wisdom. I remember after graduating high school, I expressed to my father that I wanted to join the military, and I wanted to join the Army. And I had this thought in my head that I would join first, I would serve my nation, I'd immediately deploy, and at some point in time, I would come back from that deployment, and then I would knock out college. I would use my benefits to obtain my education. And being a young 17, 18-year-old at that time, my father, who had that wisdom, thankfully said, "Hey, son, that's a great idea, but no, you're going to go to college first. And if you want to join the Army, I'll support you in that. But I want you to go to college, and I want you to become an officer, because I feel like you have that aptitude." He had coached me. I was a very avid baseball player when I was younger. He saw in me the ability to lead, the ability to motivate others. So he was the first person to kind of put that seed in my head and say, "Hey, look, that's great that you want to serve your community, but I think you can do more. I think you can lead soldiers." And that's when he put me in contact with a recruiting officer out of the University of New Mexico, Eric Savini, who wound up being a mentor of mine throughout my time as a cadet at UNM.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. That is pretty awesome. Did you see it in yourself at all that hey, I'm meant for more than, or was that your dad had suggested it and then you took that and then was like, oh yeah, I am meant for something more?
I got to say, as a young man, you have a lot of ideas and concepts about yourself, and you're busy trying to figure out who you are as an individual. I don't think I envisioned myself as an officer, as a leader, but I was looking forward to the challenge. I wanted to show my father that whatever he saw in me, I could live up to. And I think through that mentorship, like I said, that I had with Eric Savini, that was another opportunity for me to kind of show somebody who stuck their neck out there for me, right? He he knew I had no concept or no idea of what Army life was going to be like, what service was going to be like, what leading soldiers was going to be like. But he invested his time and his belief in me, and I wanted to show him that that wasn't for nothing. So I think I kind of grew into it, right? I don't know if I was necessarily, an 18, 19-year-old who, saw General Patton in himself. I'm definitely not saying that, but I saw the challenge and I wanted to excel. So I took the opportunity that the UNM Army ROTC put in front of me, and I made a career out of it.
Okay. Yeah. So after meeting Mr. Savini as a recruiting officer, was the UNM the only school you looked at? Was that pretty much it? Like, hey, I have this in front of me, go after it? Or were you looking around at all?
Yeah, so I was a student at UNM before I joined the Army ROTC program. So I want to say I joined sometime in my sophomore year of college. So I was already committed to UNM. I didn't really shop around and look for other programs that were available. And in fact, I had the luxury of going to school at UNM that offered programs through the Marine Corps, Navy, and Air Force. But I chose the Army because that's what I wanted. That's what I had aspired to do before even joining UNM.
Okay, yeah. So other than just joining the Army, did you have anything during because you joined as a sophomore, did you want to be an engineer in the Army Reserve starting off, or did you have any other idea of what you wanted to get out of, job wise when you were a sophomore in the program?
Yeah, so before the ROTC program, I really didn't have a good frame of reference for what I could do in the Army. I had never spoken to a recruiter before. Like I said, I didn't have any immediate family members who were involved in service. So I wasn't truly exposed to what the Army had to offer until I joined the ROTC program. I want to say that my decision to join the Engineer Corps happened sometime in my senior year of college, after I had returned from um, Fort Lewis. That was our. I don't know what you guys refer to it now, but that was kind of the final litmus test to determine, whether or not you had what it takes to become an Army officer. But at that point, when I returned from Fort Lewis, I kind of I had come to the conclusion that I wanted to be involved in combat arms, but I also wanted to use my brain, right? And that's not to denigrate, infantry armor or other combat arms, but the Engineer Corps really stood out to me because it was an opportunity for you to take hold of complex problems and issues and come up with solutions for combatant commanders, right? An engineer is the Swiss Army knife of the United States Army. If a gap needs to be crossed, we're going to cross it. If a route needs to be cleared, we're going to clear it. It was an opportunity for me to challenge myself mentally as well as physically, and that's what I truly fell in love with when it came to the Engineer Corps.
That's really awesome to hear. The engineers are always that piece where you're doing counter mobility or mobility, moving soldiers around or making sure the enemy can't get through us. I think you brought up a few good points. Just talking there, I just wanted to re-talk about your life as a cadet too. So I think the biggest thing for a lot of cadets is we want to know, what was it like for you when you first joined the program? Did you do any of the were you involved in any special teams or anything like that?
So I think to talk about my time as a cadet, I think it's best to kind of start where it all began, right? There was that conversation with Eric Savini where he was explaining to me what the Army was and what it could offer for me and what I could offer for it. So after that first conversation, he also realized, look, I'm not a freshman in college. I can't join as a 4-year cadet. But what I can do is I can attend the leadership training course to make up for the 2 years that I did miss. And that was my first introduction to the Army, right? Throwing you into the deep end, so to speak. So I recall my first formal event with the ROTC battalion was a PT test, to see if I qualified to go to leadership training camp. And it was an eye opener. It was an opportunity for me to see all the Corps cadets out there in their Army PT uniform, knocking out their push-ups, sit-ups, that 2-mile run. I know that PT test has since gone away, and that's a sign of my age here. But yeah, it was interesting to see it, and like I said, I was coming from a civilian. I had no concept of what life would be like as a cadet. So seeing them stand in formation, reporting up through their ranks, it was the moment that I realized, okay, this is real. You're joining a service, you're joining a community, you're joining a brotherhood, a sisterhood, of America's sons and daughters who are willing to volunteer to defend this country. And it that was the first time that I could say, like, look, I'm going to be a part of something larger than me. So thankfully, being fresh off the street, I was able to qualify in that PT test. And I remember that summer, I hopped on an airplane and I was sent to Fort Knox, Kentucky. A bit of a culture shock to me, growing up here in the Southwest. That was the first time I had drill sergeants with their round brown in my face. So I remember it was, it's very stereotypical, very Hollywood. They're hopping on the school bus that transported you from the airport out to Fort Knox, and they're yelling at you to grab your stuff. They're having you dump out your A bag in front of them, sharking around you, just trying to make sure that you're standing at attention properly. And like I said, I had no experience, but they helped shape and mold me into an officer. Right. That was like the first time that an NCO started investing time in me and shaping me into the leader that they would want. So that program, is roughly a month long. It was a total immersion into the Army experience, right? PTing in the morning, classroom instruction, land navigation, everything. Everything was thrown at me, trying to catch me up for the 2 years that I missed with the other cadets. And after returning from leadership training course as an honor graduate, it was I can say it was an opportunity where I completely transformed as an individual. I know that sounds very cliche, but it's true. Those drill sergeants took some punk kid who had all these delusions of grandeur, and they shaped me into a soldier and a future leader.
That is awesome to hear. And just to follow that, is there anything defining about that basic camp that you went to, that you find like either a memory or a story that you found very memorable while you were there?
Yeah, like I said, growing up throughout my childhood, I always had structure, right? My parents were involved in law enforcement, and they made sure that we were, good kids, like me and my sisters. But I want to say that leadership training course was the first instance I had ever had some stranger come up to me and tell me, how messed up I was, how sloppy my uniform looked, how, poor my push-ups were, whatever it may be. That was the first time I'd ever had a drill sergeant in my face, and that is an unforgettable experience, I think, for anybody, whether it's a E1 private or a cadet. Drill sergeants are a unique entity within within the United States Army. And I think anybody who has had any sort of experience with one, that is an unforgettable moment. But they have a very pivotal and very important role in our organization, or my former organization there, and that they truly shape the future of the Army. So they take 18-year-old kids and they shape them and mold them into a fierce fighting force that is unmatched across the globe.
Definitely. Going from there, so you've been transformed during this experience. What was life as a cadet like returning from advanced camp, or not advanced, the basic camp as they call it? Because now you're a junior. Yeah, what was that like coming back from that?
Yeah, so coming back, greeted by Mr. Savini. Like I said, he was always that ever-present figure, that mentor. Slap on the back, hey, good job, but the real work starts now. And that's when I enrolled in the military science courses, our lab courses, and I really started to refine those leadership skills. And I started assuming roles within that Corps of Cadets there, within that ROTC battalion. I think I recall assuming a position as a squad leader right away, and that was the first opportunity for me to have any sort of like formal supervision of anybody, right? Even if it is just in the realm of this cadet setting. But it was, once again, it was an opportunity for me to refine those skills, to learn what it was going to take to become a leader in the Army. And those labs were our first exposure to any sort of tactics, like small unit tactics, we also had the luxury of having other ROTC battalions in our area here, hosted at the University of Texas at El Paso, New Mexico State, as well as the University of Arizona. So getting all of those sister battalions together in a friendly competition, but also in a dynamic training environment. We hosted as well as attended quite a few different trainings with those sister battalions, and I think that was a great opportunity for us to work with our sister battalions to our left and right. But yeah, it was an eye opener for me.
And then, is it that summer of your junior year you went to Fort Lewis, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then what was that called? Do you remember?
Yeah, you're asking me something that's about a decade ago. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't recall exactly what it was what it was called, but
Okay.
it would be the equivalent of your advanced camp, right? This.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this was the final opportunity for our assessors and evaluators to take a look at us. A month-long field exercise, so to speak, where they're assessing your leadership skills, they're assessing your decision making, as well as your tactics and how you're employing the soldiers that are kind of at your disposal in a bit of a round robin fashion. Everybody's getting an opportunity to lead. You're setting up ambushes, you're setting up like cordon and search, patrols, spending as much time as humanly possible in the field. It was interesting, right? It's Fort Lewis. It's a very stark contrast from the American Southwest. I mean, it's a literal rainforest. Seeing those massive redwood trees and the famous protected ant species that lives on Fort Lewis, and just constantly being wet and cold. That's what I remember the most about it, is just being wet, cold, and smelling horrendous the entire time. But everybody is kind of just joining in that misery, and it's unifying you guys. It's this shared experience of, okay, everybody's trying to do the very best they can so they can wind up at the top of the OML and be able to select whatever branch or whatever service they want. And it was a fun environment, but it was also a very challenging environment. And it was another opportunity for me to head out there solo, alone, and show myself that I had what it took to lead soldiers eventually one day.
After that experience, did you do any broadening summer internships, or did you go right back to UNM?
So I went straight back to UNM, and I continued my education there. I was also a transfer student from the University of Texas at El Paso my first couple of years. So time was kind of the essence for me, right? So I really had to put my nose to the grindstone and just hammer out all of these classes. So that was the primary focus for me. I was adamant that I did not want to be a winter graduate or have to stay on for another semester. Because you have to realize at the time when we're looking to graduate from college, this is a transitional period for the operations that are ongoing in Afghanistan and Iraq. And for myself and the other cadets, we're realizing that, okay, this is our senior year. This is real, right? There's a combat zone, half a world away that we're preparing to lead soldiers into. So it's real, right? And we're wanting to get out there as soon as possible. And I that's one thing that I just remember very vividly is that, myself and some of my fellow cadets were just adamant about getting out to big Army as soon as we could so that we could lend a hand, right? That was always the goal, is to lead soldiers and serve. So the sooner we could get that done, the better. So I remember returning back from advanced camp and just being, laser focused in on getting my studies done, absorbing as much as I could. I remember attending Arabic classes as well at UNM, just so that I could, brush up on my skills and in hopes that I could actually put that those language schools to some use.
Another thing I wanted to hit on, talking about courses, is, were you in taking engineering courses like as a major during this time?
Absolutely not. And that is always kind of a running joke. I was a poli-sci major.
Okay.
I loved history. I loved writing. I loved, English courses. And, the misnomer of Army engineer has always done me a disservice, because folks hear they ask, oh, well, what did you do in the Army? I said, oh, I was an engineer. And they immediately jump to, oh, okay, so you're a degreed engineer and you're great at math. And nothing could be further from the truth, right? My aspirations were always to serve within a combat engineering unit. I saw a passion and desire to do route clearance, and in fact, that was the first unit that I joined. It was attached to Camp Pendleton out in California, and it was a combat engineering unit. And I wanted nothing to do with vertical or horizontal engineering. I have all the respect for those types of engineers, but math has never been my strong suit, and I am not ashamed to admit it.
Just to clarify, so even for some of our listeners, so vertical and horizontal engineering, can you just give us a little bit of clarification on what that means in the engineering world?
Yeah, so the Army Corps of Engineers, it's an extremely diverse group of individuals within the United States Army. So we have everything from combat divers, firefighters, carpenters, electricians, plumbers, as well as heavy equipment operators, right? All of these individuals serve kind of this unified concept of what the Army Corps of Engineers. So like three main components of the engineer corps would be vertical engineering, horizontal engineering, as well as combat engineering. So vertical kind of lends itself to structures, buildings. So anything from building sea huts in austere conditions, or more formally working for the Army Corps of Engineers on the civilian side, providing defense support to civil authorities or other areas. Oftentimes, if you're traveling around the United States, you'll notice that a lot of facilities, dams, and other structures are actually created by the Army Corps of Engineers, and that's a hybrid of both civilians. As well as what I would refer to as a green suiter, right? Somebody who wears the Army uniform, somebody who raised their hand and took an oath. And in addition to that, you have horizontal engineering, which is bridging operations, building roadways, soil compaction, doing water purification, setting up blivets, things like that, working in strong concert with the other branches of the Army, the Transportation Corps, logistical units, so on and so forth. And then you have your combat engineers. And as much as infantry would like to say it, combat engineering, you are the tip of the spear, right? If a route's black, there's only one unit that's going to be able to make it green, right? And that's the Engineer Corps. They're in front of those lead elements. They're clearing the way. They're blowing through wire. They're using Bangalore charges to tear it up. They're blasting through walls to get into compounds. They're a jack of all trades, right? And they're also utilized in as you mentioned before, counter mobility operations. So if you're in a more traditional sense of force on force, where you're fighting another world power that has armored units, you're setting up tank traps. You're building fortifications. You're digging out tank remnants so that you can support those combat arms positions and win the fight.
Definitely, yeah. We appreciate the clarification on all of that. It's super insightful, because a lot of people just don't know how much the engineers really do, and that's really awesome to hear. Like all of those capabilities. So like even from diver to bridging operations, there's just tons out there. I think going back to it, did you? Like you were saying, you did choose the engineers. Did anything specifically stand out to you? Did the cadre, did Mr. Savini say, oh, yeah, hey, if you want something more, engineers is the way to go?
Yeah, no. So I kind of threw out that little dig at the infantry specifically because, Mr. Savini was formerly Lieutenant Colonel Eric Savini, and he was an infantryman. And I say that because it's a brotherly competition between the various branches within in the United States Army, right? We love to joke and kid around with each other, but no, the reason why I selected the Engineer Corps, so separate from the active duty component, I knew I wanted to get into the reserves because I had always had the aspiration of joining the FBI. So I wanted to have this parallel career to my Army career. And in the reserves, you have the opportunity to essentially select your branch. And it was just a perfect fit for me, right? Like I said, I fell in love with the combat engineers mission. I wanted to be out there and be a doer. I wanted to be involved in it. I wanted to, wear those castles. That is something that I'd venture to say that most branches don't have the level of history of the Engineer Corps. They don't have the same level of just pure reliance on your branch for shifting and shaping the literal landscape of a battlefield. That's why I take immense pride in serving or having served in the Engineer Corps, because it was that opportunity to literally shape the earth and move the earth and help tip the scales in the favor of our combatant commanders, those who are doing overseeing our aviation units, our armor units, our infantry units, logistics, supplies, everybody. We were kind of called upon to serve and to serve those commanders to the best of our ability and be able to protect our fellow service members by, clearing the way, clearing the obstacles, or defending them. That was always a huge factor of why I wanted to join the Engineer Corps, because it was an opportunity for me to serve those who are serving our nation.
Another thing I wanted to touch on was, now that you're back, you decided your branch. What happened there after?
Yeah, I commissioned in
Okay.
May of 2013, and
Yep.
that's when adulthood sets in, right? I'm in the reserves, and I'm I had a buddy who had some connections with a local reserve unit here, so I'm knocking out mutas just to stay good while I'm waiting for an opportunity to attend Bullock. And that's when, Mr. Savini, once again, he's there to help, mentor, and get me along my way. And he approaches me and he says, "Hey, I got another opportunity for you. If you're interested in it, it's called Gold Bar Recruiting. If you'd like to come back to UNM and recruit for us for a short time while you're waiting to go to Bullock, I have an opportunity for you." And I jumped at it. I was a broke recent college grad, and it was a great opportunity to start the clock on my Army service. And I recruited for the UNM Army ROTC battalion for a short while I waited to attend Bullock, and I got to say it was a great opportunity. It was a lot of fun because I was able to see things from the flip side. At one point in time, there was a recruiter who sat across the desk from me, and explained to me what the Army was, introduced me to the Army, and helped me start a career. And recruiting for that Army ROTC battalion was a great opportunity to lead some of those students towards a career path that, I still remember a lot of people that I introduced to the Army, and it's great to see where the careers have taken them. And a few of them have chosen to make a lifelong career of the Army. A few have done a few tours of duty, and they're now transitioned over to the civilian side of life. And it's just an amazing opportunity to see somebody make that transformation from a civilian into a service member. But immediately after that, I began really putting out the feelers for the FBI, and I knew that was always an aspiration of mine, and I needed to get my foot in the door. I knew I had always aspired to become a special agent, and I knew there was one requirement that stood in the way of me becoming that special agent, and that was that full-time work experience. My entire life up to this point, I was a student, and I had never really joined the workforce. So I knew I needed that opportunity to obtain those 2 years of applicable job experience before I could even, think about applying to become a special agent. And that's when an opportunity came across my email. It was a job opening for the Special Surveillance Group, and I read the description and I said, okay, well, that kind of sounds a little bit similar to, Army reconnaissance. And I think I've attended a training here or there, so maybe that'd be a good fit. So I applied, and I didn't hear anything for a while. And then next thing you know, I was reached out to by a person who works in human resources. And they said, hey, we've taken a look at your application, and we'd like you to interview for this position. And I was fortunate enough to be selected for training, and I was kind of already in that mindset. I had attended Bullock at Fort Leonard Wood. I was in the mindset of learning and absorbing. So it was another opportunity for me to go out there and learn a completely different skill set. The Special Surveillance Group, they're responsible for providing physical surveillance for the FBI. We worked everything from national security matters to criminal matters in a covert capacity, and it was a great experience, and it was my pathway to becoming a special agent. And it was one that, albeit was a little unconventional. so to speak. Most folks, they get their experience from numerous different backgrounds. We have everybody from teachers, scientists, doctors, lawyers, law enforcement members, service members, and that's how they were able to obtain their qualified work experience. But for me, I started my career with the FBI as a member of our professional staff, our mission support, and it was my first introduction to federal law enforcement, and I immediately I knew this was for me. I loved the FBI's mission. It was an opportunity for me to continue to serve my community and do so while I was still a service member in the reserves. It was a perfect marriage between two different organizations with a common goal of protecting our communities, just doing it in very different ways. And I have to say the FBI was extremely supportive of my Army career. Gave me ample time off to go attend trainings, to take care of whatever I needed to do on the Army side, and then come back and apply some of those skills to my job as a member of the Special Surveillance Group.
Yeah, so just you covered that is that's a ton of experience, and it's really awesome. So just for my understanding, so um, you went to Bullock first, and then you were able to get into the Special Surveillance Group, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I attended Bullock at Fort Leonard Wood, and that's where you're really learning what it is to be an Army engineer. And as I mentioned previously, there are numerous functional areas within the Army Corps of Engineers. So you're getting a taste of everything. You're learning what the enlisted soldiers and what their functions are within the Army Corps of Engineers, and oftentimes the mission sets are very different from the enlisted soldier to an officer, right? So you're having to familiarize yourself um, with the different functional areas that are available and opportunities there are for your enlisted soldiers, so that you can better mentor them. So you can embody that servant leadership ideal. But yeah, it was a very long training, very challenging. I was in the dead of winter at Fort Leonard Wood, and that was my first exposure to -10, -15 degree weather, and still having to head out there and run and PT and participate in field exercises and demolition on the range. It was quite an experience.
Yeah, just to talk maybe a little bit more about that. Are you getting so you're getting the full like breadth or knowledge base of they're pretty much touching on everything. Are they touching on like vertical engineering and horizontal engineering and route clearance? Pretty much hitting the basics of everything.
Exactly.
So you're well rounded, or how does okay?
Yeah, so at the time, and obviously this was nearly a decade ago, so methods of instruction may have changed, but they broke it up into three main areas, and that, like I said, would be horizontal, vertical, and combat engineering. And within each, you're learning the different responsibilities of an Army officer and how you fit in those units that provide those services for commanders, right? So any sort of road building operations or grading operations or route repair, airfield repair, you're learning that on the horizontal side, and all the while you're taking exams and tests, and you're having to prove to your instructors that you not only learned this, but you're retaining this knowledge and you're able to apply this knowledge, and it ultimately culminates in your graduation as a engineer officer. And you have a large full scale exercise where you're applying all of this knowledge, your knowledge of demolition and breaching operations, as well as the basic functions of vertical and horizontal engineering.
Once you did get done with bullet completely. You transitioned back, and then your unit was in. Where'd you start off unit wise? Were you in New Mexico or were you in Texas? And what was the dynamic like from there?
Yeah, so I bounced around quite a bit. That's the beauty of being in the Army Reserves is that um, you can transfer quite easily. You know, it's a federal entity. So versus the National Guard, where you're having to approach various National Guard bureaus at different states and seeing if they will one release you and then another unit accept you. It's fairly straightforward process transferring between various commands within the reserve. So I want to say in the first few years of my Army career, I transferred units to from New Mexico, where I was uh, uh, commander of an engineered detachment that was attached to a transportation unit, uh, to Amarillo, Texas, where I served as the kind of interim or acting commander of that company before I wound up getting a job offer from the FBI, and at that point I relocated out to California and had a unit accept me there, um, in a training role. So I was an observer coach trainer in that unit. So I bounced around quite a bit, and all the while I was able to lend my experience and my knowledge as an engineer officer and apply it to these various units that I became a part of. But yeah,
It sounds
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you got a ton of experience just there. So, like just by starting out, you did you say you were immediately pretty much put into a commander role?
Yeah. So it was a command role, but it was still very much a platoon leader position, right? So it was an engineer detachment that was attached to a transportation unit. So there was about 10 or 12 soldiers, right? So traditionally, what we would consider a pretty small platoon. So I still had those baby steps of learning what it takes to become a platoon leader, and eventually take that knowledge and that skill based on that experience and apply it towards company command. But yeah, no, things were very dynamic, and that is what is very different from active duty in that it's the needs of the reserves, and if there just so happens to be a unit that lacks officers, you may be called to fill positions. As an O2 out in California, uh, I was billeted in an O4's position. I was placed in command of an observer coach trainer team, and those positions are usually reserved for majors for good reason, because the NCOs that you're working with are E7s and above. You're dealing with senior enlisted soldiers who are there to teach and instruct and prepare units for mobilization overseas. So uh, it was definitely an opportunity to excel. Right, you're forced into that position to learn fast and absorb what you can, and do the best that you can. So uh, I had a pretty dynamic career early on where I was asked to do more with less. And it came down to resource constraints, lack of personnel, or whatever it may be. Um, but that's the beauty of the Army, right? We're going to get the mission done regardless of whatever obstacles are placed in front of us.
Definitely, yeah. Um, is another just going off of that, um, being put into that, '04 billet. What was that like? And then what did you really have to rely on your NCOs in order to build you up, or did you have any mentors that helped you increase your knowledge base while you were there?
Both. I would say I had great officers that I can use as role models. One of those that I recall pretty vividly is a Major Timothy Ang. He was a fantastic leader, a fantastic Army officer, and he mentored me and helped educate me. And on the flip side of that, I was always blessed with fantastic senior NCOs who are willing to allow me to make mistakes and let me learn from experience, but they were always there to help guide me and help pull me back from the precipice if I ever got a little too close to making a irrevocable mistake. So I would say it was definitely a concert of the two. I had fantastic officers that I worked with at various different units, and then like I said, I was just always blessed with great senior NCOs who wanted to invest their time, experience, and knowledge in me in order to make me a better leader. I want to say after every unit that I transferred from, every position that I held, I was a better individual for those experiences. I was a better individual for those opportunities to be mentored by both senior enlisted as well as officers, and even a lot of the junior enlisted that I had an opportunity to learn from. They were fresh out of basic training, and they had the latest and greatest on what was being instructed by Big Army, and it truly was an opportunity to sit down with them and say, okay, right, let's take a look at the 240 Bravo, for example. Talk to me about this weapon system. Explain it to me. You're a gunner. What do you do? You have the ability. If you have the humility, you're able to learn from everybody and anybody, regardless of rank.
Yeah, definitely. See it a lot from even just being a junior officer. You definitely just need your support, just about everybody, just to understand your environment, and that's what we try to instill into the cadets. Is like once you do get out there, whether it doesn't matter if you're National Guard or active duty, you don't know that much. You need to be humble about it. But that's just awesome to hear that your experience was really good. Additionally, so just going off of that, so did you also move, or were you centrally located in Albuquerque still, like living in Albuquerque, and then just fly to your different units for their weekends, or how did that dynamic work?
So early on, yes, I was located in Albuquerque, and I would commute because it units are located at the needs of the Army, right? And unfortunately, here in Albuquerque, there just really isn't a whole lot of opportunity for engineers. So I did. I traveled quite a bit. I traveled from Albuquerque to like the Fort Carson area in Aurora, Colorado, where I joined a unit out there. Like I said, I also joined a unit out in Amarillo, Texas. And for a short time, I would commute to and from Albuquerque to Colorado or Texas. But the reason why I relocated my unit out to Camp Parks in Dublin, California, I had accepted that position with the FBI, and the FBI moved me out to San Francisco, California. So I was kind of at that point I was over it. I was over the long drives and the long weekends, and it was kind of dragging on me. And I was adamant about finding a unit and finding a home that were located fairly close to each other. And by virtue of California being such a large and populous state with a lot of different Army posts, there was plenty of opportunity for me to become an engineer. And I remember reaching out to a friend of an NCO of mine, and he kind of put it in my ear and he said, "Hey, sir, we got a couple of units out here and here, but I really think you should look into this observer coach trainer unit. There's a lot of great senior officers there. Yeah. I've met with the battalion commander. He's a great individual. I think you should interview with that battalion commander and see if he's willing to take you on as a junior officer into, like I said, a billet that is intended for somebody who has a lot more experience and a lot more time in service."
Definitely, yeah. That's pretty awesome that you got that it was seamless, pretty much, right? That you did get the opportunity and got to get that position. I think the next thing was just so at that time, had you deployed for Operation Enduring Freedom yet, or what
So
happened
So
Okay.
while I was assigned to that unit out at Camp Parks, California, that's when an opportunity came up to mobilize and join another sister battalion and help support, uh, mobilization efforts out of Fort Hood, Texas. So I jumped at the opportunity. It was a chance to kind of take a step back from my FBI career and focus on my Army career and help develop that. And I knew that if I could serve in a active duty setting full time, I would be forced to learn so much more, both administratively as well as operationally, what it takes to become an Army officer. And I thought, okay, well, I've been giving a lot of time, attention, and effort towards my FBI career, but this opportunity's come up, and I'd like to take it. So I jumped at it, and I packed my bags and I head out to Killeen, Texas, and I joined our sister battalion who mobilized in support of OEF. And our main task while we were there was to prepare units for deployments overseas and into various combat theaters all across the globe. And it was a great opportunity, but unfortunately, it was also kind of the beginning of the end of my Army career. I had always intended on serving in a lifelong capacity, but while I was there, I wound up having a career-ending injury that required various surgeries and had a lengthy recovery and complications during recovery, and ultimately the Army wound up convening a medical review board, and I was ultimately medically retired as a captain. So unfortunately, that brought my Army career to a close, but it was also a major motivator for me to kind of pick myself up and not accept defeat and refocus my energies into my other career, which was the FBI. So after I had that, career-ending injury, I went back to the FBI, and I knew I needed some more time before I could apply to become an FBI agent, because a special agent, very similar to the Army's mission, but also very different. A lot is asked of you physically, and having suffered that injury, I really needed to take time and be patient and attend rehabilitation and attend my medical appointments and make sure that I was as close to 100% as I could before I made that push to become a special agent. So I looked for other opportunities within the FBI, and I saw an opportunity arise, and it was a position within our intelligence branch within the FBI, and I served as a staff operations specialist, supporting the FBI's mission with tactical level analysis. And I did that for a few years while I recovered from that injury, and
What specifically? Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, what specifically did you do as a staff operations specialist? If you could talk anything about it, you brought up the tactical level analysis, but what does that mean?
So the FBI's intelligence branch, we support the FBI's mission in two very distinct realms: the strategic level analysis, which is looking at big picture, and then we also have what's known as tactical level intelligence, and that's getting down into the minutia of everything. So as a staff operations specialist, I provided direct case support to special agents. So I was able to become familiar with our various investigations that we had. At the time, I was working in El Paso, Texas, on a border region, which was a very dynamic environment with a lot of various, criminal as well as national security threats to the area of operations, and it was an eye opener. It was another opportunity for me to experience the FBI in a different setting. While I was a member of the Special Surveillance Group, I was a member of a team, and we worked constantly outside of the office. And then I transitioned into an FBI career as a member of our intelligence branch, and I was I was working, directly with agents. I was in our cubicle farms, so to speak, and I had an opportunity to chat around with some of the agents around the water cooler and ask them what their experiences were, why they chose to become a special agent. What was the good, bad, and the ugly. Like every career out there, there are good days and there are bad days, and I wanted to hear it all because I wanted to make sure. I wanted that validation that this lifelong aspiration of mine was this, was this just a pipe dream, or is this something that I truly want to do? And my time as a member of our intel community here within the FBI solidified that desire to become a special agent. So it helped refocus my energies and gave me a lot of fantastic experience where I was exposed to just a whole litany of different positions, different people who all contribute to our mission, and seeing just every cog within the mechanism, working in perfect concert and harmony to get the mission done. And it reminded me a lot of the Army, but it was still that opportunity to continue to serve, just in a different way, in a different uniform, a suit this time.
And then just for more understanding is, so special surveillance group and staff operations specialist, you're not a special agent, but what does it mean, I guess, because there's positions within the FBI that well, you're not a special agent, but what does it mean, I guess, to be that special agent versus being in a different role? And is there is there some sort of a hierarchy where it's like with being an Army officer, you're ultimately trying to get increasing in rank or promotions and stuff like that?
So, well, there is a similar, I guess you could say, rank structure, which in federal service we refer to your GS levels, right? And that would be very similar to Army ranks. I would say that the two realms are very different when it comes to hierarchy. There is a hierarchy, there is a chain of command, but where the similarities kind of come back together is that we have very complex missions, the FBI as well as the Army. And in order to accomplish those missions, we need a lot of different subject matter experts. So very similar to the Army, having finance officers and enlisted members, human resources specialists, firefighters, carpenters, forward observers, tankers, the list could go on and on. It's very similar with the FBI as well. We have a lot of different specialists in a lot of different areas. We have scientists, we have artists, we have polygraphers, we have agents, we have intel members, we have, a huge laundry list of different positions that all contribute towards the FBI's mission. And that was something that became very apparent to me when I was in SOS, when I was, staff operations specialist. I was able to work in the office and see, the different, folks, like everybody from our forfeiture specialists to our linguists to our intelligence analysts and our special agents, and see how each one of them worked as a member of a team to accomplish the mission. So I think there's less focus on hierarchy and more focus on a specialty of your skills, right? Because no one person can get it done. No one person can make an investigation progress. We need people from all walks of life, with all experiences, with all different diverse backgrounds to contribute to one investigation. And that is both the beauty and strength of the FBI, is that our diversity of our workforce is really what lends ourselves to accomplish the mission in ways where we're able to think critically about issues, and we're able to think critically about complex investigations and come up with creative solutions.
That's really eye-opening, because I never really understood that about the FBI, but it does almost make sense in a way that everybody's working together. It's not a military force, and then everybody has their own specialty. What was the workload like for you as a staff operations specialist?
Um, I would say it was the operational tempo is pretty high. Being in a border region, I worked transnational organized crime, Western Hemisphere, uh, and essentially what that means is that you're tasked with supporting investigations into Mexican drug trafficking organizations as well as other criminal organizations that kind of headquarter themselves in the Western Hemisphere. So being in a border region, there was ample opportunity for me to contribute to that mission. So I would say the work tempo was pretty high, but it never really there was an ebb and flow. But yes, by virtue of where we were geographically, as well as um, the nexus of having an international border, as well as main arteries of transportation all throughout the El Paso area, there was plenty of work, plenty of opportunity to support those cases. And
Okay, and then yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so that operational tempo, what kind of prepared me for that was that Army career, right? A lot is asked of your soldiers. People joke and they say, "Hey, you're on commander's time. You work 24 hours. It is what it is." So having those ideals of service before self and having that really instilled in you during an Army career, I was better prepared for that. But along with that high operational tempo, I had a lot of good leaders. While I was down there in El Paso, who understood the importance of the camaraderie, of the downtime, so to speak. And when it was time to be with your family, it was time to be with your family and unplug and relax and decompress. So while the operation tempo was very high, I would say morale was very high too, because a lot of these people, they're your FBI family. They're the people that you trust to have your back and protect you when you need protecting and support you when you need supporting and just being people that you can joke with and share a meal with. So it was there were busy times, but they were very good times too.
Awesome. And then as a staff operations specialist, did you get sent to Quantico or another training area where they trained you up before you started?
Yes, absolutely. So I've had three different experiences with Quantico. Each time I pursued a different position within the FBI, I attended formalized training. It first began with the basic surveillance course, and then it further evolved into the SOS basic training. And then ultimately, when I became a special agent, we had the basic field training course to become a special agent. So I kidded around with a lot of my classmates when I was at BFTC. I said, I've shed more tears and blood and sweat in Quantico than I've actually liked to admit. I spent a lot of time there in that training environment. It is great opportunity to learn. You're working with some of your peers who are the brightest and the best this nation has to offer. You're joining the premier law enforcement agency in the world, and a lot of my peers really did live up to that reputation, and it was very humbling to see just all these different people from different walks of lives with these, the level of expertise and education that I otherwise would have never been exposed to in any other setting. It was an amazing experience, and each time I went back there, I learned something new. I was always placed in a position where every single day, you're pushing yourself to be better than the person you were the day before. Quantico is a unique environment where you're able to live in a challenging environment where you're offered the opportunity to either excel or you're given the choice. It's not like the Army. You don't have drill sergeants who are getting in your face, yelling at you, and telling you how to make your bed and when to wake up and where to report and when to do it. You're um, you're expected to be a professional when you arrive there. Um, you're selected because you have something to offer the organization, and they want you to be there, and they want to see you excel, and they're empowering you with all the tools and knowledge necessary to excel, but they're putting a lot of the onus on you. And it was a stark contrast to what I had experienced before in the Army, where a lot of the method of instruction in the Army, you know, they're molding and shaping and trying to you know, have you embody this ideal of what an Army officer or soldier should be. At Quantico, you're really afforded the opportunity to show what you got and to excel given the tools and the environment that you're given there.
Yeah, can you tell us anything about that? Versus, like, what's it like? So once you decided to be a special agent, um, and you put it in your packet or however that process works, and you get the opportunity, um, is the idea? So you go to Quantico, and then what sort of is it all instruction and then test, or how does that work?
You know, it's a good mix of everything, right? You know, there's a lot of different facets, what it takes to become an FBI special agent, right? You know, a lot's asked of you to you know, meet physical requirements. So there's, you know, your normal PT sessions that you're familiar with from your time in the Army. It's a similar PT test, um, but there's also,
You can say what it is.
so the PT test, it consists of a minute of continuous motion push-ups, a minute of continuous motion sit-ups. We have a 300-meter sprint and then a 1.5-mile run, as well as pull-ups to muscle failure. And I have to say, you know, having the experience of taking, you know, 8 years of Army PT tests, I was very confident. Oh, it's gonna, you know, this should be a breeze. You know, this is the one test where they give you the answers, right? There's not a whole
Uh-huh.
lot to it, but I got to say, it is humbling. It is humbling to you know, have 5 minutes of rest period in between each, and just immediately knock out each one of those iterations and really push and try and get the best possible score that you can. So our physical requirements to become a special agent are nothing to really balk at. They're a challenge. But in addition to that physical challenge that Quantico provides you with, they also challenge you intellectually. You have different methods of instruction, from practical training through classroom instruction. All along the way, you're taking exams and required to pass with a 90 or above. You know, they're demanding excellence, right? Because the community is demanding that excellence from you. You know, if you fail, you're failing your community. So, you know, the standard is very high while you're there. In addition to that classroom instruction, you're also doing incredibly intensive firearms training. We're literally shooting thousands upon thousands of rounds, and I always fancied myself a you know, a good marksman. You know, you know, I always qualified expert, you know, on the M9 and M4, but heading there to Quantico, you're seeing just how much better they can make you. You know, you're working with some of the world's leading experts who have studied this as an art and science, and they're improving you every step of the way, and just seeing from day to day, week to week, just how tight those groups of shots get, and how quick and how accurate you get. It was a great opportunity, and in addition to that, we're engaging in defensive tactics, which is takes a lot from, you know, striking as well as judo, and it's extremely challenging. I was never involved in martial arts as a young man, and I had always performed in Army combatives, and that was, you know, my real exposure to, you know, a martial art or martial sport. But there at the academy, going through defensive tactics and learning how to, retain your weapon while you're in a fight and utilize less than lethal tactics. It was a great learning experience. So you have a lot of different and challenging aspects of what it takes to become a special agent, and all along that training opportunity there, you're constantly being evaluated by your instructors and assessed and making sure that you're meeting standards and that you're retaining and learning this information that they're providing you. And it's a lot to take in, but like I said, you're working with some of the world's leading experts in their various areas of specialty. So you're getting the best possible education and the best possible instruction from everybody from your firearms instructors to your defensive tactics instructors to your legal instructors and interviewing and interrogation. And that was a very interesting component of the FBI Academy. Our interview and interrogation instructors were some of the best and brightest agents that we had in the FBI. A few of them came out of our behavioral analysis unit, and that is a highly specialized unit. You see it on television quite often, and it gets featured on Mindhunter and various other Hollywood depictions of it. Well, they may not be accurate in nature. It definitely showcases that our behavioral analysis unit is that elite group of agents and mission support staff who are handling complex investigations that require that added expertise.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome to hear that you're going through striking and the martial arts in order to get you familiarized with all that, as well as the legal portion of being an FBI agent, knowing the laws and stuff like that. Is there anything you found yourself struggling with more than others? And then is there anything you found yourself doing better at far more than others?
I got to say everything is a challenge. And I know that's kind of a bit of a cop-out here, but they really are pushing you to be the best that you can be. So like I said, while I had a certain level of confidence from my time in the Army, working with small arms, it was extremely humbling to attend firearms training at the academy and realize that, hey, maybe I'm not as great as I thought I was, right? And then our legal courses, our American legal system is a very complex legal system, and having attorneys who have worked at the Department of Justice and who have worked in the civilian sector, and they're instructing you on these legal concepts that are derived from our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and other case precedent. It's extremely challenging work, and I can't say that any one aspect of our instruction at Quantico was easy or that I was exceptionally good at. I think everything that was presented to me was a challenge, and as we are going through the instruction that we're presented with, you really do obtain that level of confidence and that level of knowledge from these instructors. You're not just taking exams for the sake of taking exams. You truly are learning and retaining this information and being able to apply it in real world scenarios where one day you'll be called upon to apply that knowledge in an investigation.
That is, that's definitely a different, not what I would say a different way of learning, but it's definitely an awesome way of, it is a basic training, and the Army does it their way, the same as their bullocks, and the idea is that you learn as much as you can. But that's awesome to hear that, it's the same as for the FBI, just in even more, survival sort of an aspect where you're trying to do as well as you can so you can continue on, because the idea, right, is that everybody gets hired as a special agent so they can go serve in a position they were hired for. It's not like trying to wash you out or anything, right?
Yeah, like I said, the instructors made it very clear from day one when we arrived at the academy that we were selected for a purpose. We were selected for a reason, and that the intention of Quantico and the FBI at large is not to, in your words, say, wash people out. They want you to succeed. They want you to succeed and becoming an agent. But very similar to the Army, this is Quantico creates that base level of knowledge and education, and a lot of that continues on when you become a special agent. And as I mentioned, you're learning from everybody. You're learning from our forensic accountants, our intelligence analysts, our linguists, our finance folks, our human resources, and our specialists. Your education as a special agent doesn't end at Quantico. When you're assigned to your field office, that's when the on-the-job training begins. You're assigned a training agent, and they're typically a more senior agent who is lending their experience and their wisdom, and teaching you what it really takes to become an agent. And from there, you tend to specialize in whatever area of investigations that you're assigned.
I see. Okay. And then, so what can you tell me about the, end of Quantic? So not the end of it, but graduating as a special agent.
Yeah. So graduation for me, especially, was a very proud moment. It was something that I had always aspired to be. It was a dream of mine from a very young age. And I was exposed to the FBI at a very young age. As I mentioned before, my father was a special agent with the FBI. And being able to walk across that stage and have my father hand me my credentials in front of former Director Ray was just this one of the most proudest moments. Close second to the birth of my first daughter. But being able to experience that and being able to carry my father's badge to this day, and carry on his credential number, and be a part of this family history and this continued service was just an amazing experience. But it was also very humbling as well, because the second we walked out of Quantico, the public, the community that we serve, they look to us. They look to us to, protect them, to keep them out of harm's way. And there really is no distinction between you, a day one graduate, and another agent who served 20 years. The public doesn't know what level of experience you have, or how long you've served. They expect you to be that person that in the worst hours or days of their life, they're looking to you for solace. They're looking for you to protect them. They're looking for you to give them answers to why this happened to them, or help protect them from whatever is transpired. So it was very humbling at the same time. Very proud, but very humbling.
From there, you go back to your field office, and that is in Albuquerque, or is that still in San Francisco?
No, yeah. So I'm currently assigned to the Albuquerque field office.
Okay. What was your timeline like then after graduation?
So after I graduated from the FBI Academy, I shortly thereafter reported to FBI Albuquerque. It's very similar to a move that you would do as an active duty soldier in the Army. The FBI is taking care of its employees. They're moving all your household goods out, so you're getting settled into a new city. Granted, this was a reintroduction to a city that I had been away from for about a decade, but it was a brand new city to my wife, who had never lived here before. So you're getting your family settled in, and then you're very quickly figuring out where you're going to fit within this office, and getting to know the people that you're going to work with and spend your days with. And like I said, the learning continues, and it doesn't stop. And 2 years in as a special agent, I'm still learning. I'm learning every single day, and I'm learning from everybody that I come in contact with. Not only the public, but all the individuals that I work with here at FBI Albuquerque. So it's a constant evolution, a constant opportunity to learn, but at the same time, the responsibility to our community is there. We're here to serve. We're here to ensure that our community is safe, and we work with our local partners here in the Albuquerque metro area as well as across the state. That our office has an area of responsibility that spans the entire state of New Mexico. So it's quite an undertaking.
Is there anything you could talk about as far as what you do currently as a special agent?
Yeah, so in general, I'm assigned to the white collar crime squad here at FBI Albuquerque, where I specifically work public corruption, and we're tasked to investigate violations of federal statutes. We work in close relationship with the United States Attorney's Office here in the District of New Mexico. The United States Attorney's Office are responsible for filing charges, and it's the FBI's responsibility to investigate allegations of federal crimes. So everything that we do is in constant partnership with our various federal partners as well as our local partners. I've had the opportunity to work with a task force officer from the Albuquerque Police Department. Other squads. We have task force officers from the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, or Border Protection, excuse me, and we have a lot of different individuals who lend their experience with state and local systems as well.
It was really a pleasure talking with you today, Special Agent Mercado. Could you please provide us with some words of wisdom for your future Army officers that we have in the program, or even FBI prospects who aren't sure about it but might want to do it one day?
Yeah, no. First, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. I just wanted to instill in them that humility, that humbleness, that as I mentioned earlier in the interview, that their career and their learning opportunity does not stop at Bullock. As soon as they head to their first duty station, their number one job is to learn, to absorb as much as they can, from the E1 private all the way up to, command sergeant major. You have something to learn from everybody, and just absorb it, be a sponge. But also have that level of confidence in yourself to lead. That will go far with your unit and with the soldiers that are there, and try and adopt a servant leadership model. Right, you're there to serve the soldiers in your unit, not the other way around. In terms of prospective FBI employees, my piece of advice to them is that if you're thinking about it, if it's a dream of yours, if it's an aspiration, if it's something that you've just considered, I encourage you to reach out to our field offices, reach out to our recruiting staff, and just find out a little bit of information. I'm a huge proponent of self-exploration. Right, you can read off of our websites. You can read off of FBIjobs.gov. You can Google FBI Albuquerque, but you'll never fully grasp what it entails to be an FBI employee, and until you actually head out there and do little exploring yourself. And most of our offices, they're fully staffed with individuals who are much better than I at explaining the different opportunities that we have here in the FBI. And don't limit yourself just to the special agent position. As I mentioned, I've served in 3 different positions here at the FBI, and there are literally hundreds of positions available across the United States, as well as the globe, and our various legal attaches. So I encourage individuals who have that burning desire to serve their communities to reach out and just do everything that they can to learn a little bit more from the source. Don't believe everything Hollywood shows us. They're always showing some amazing technology that I wish we had and amenities, but I think that the best opportunity for you to really pull back the curtain and see what it is that the FBI does and what our mission is by speaking to us and meeting us at various community events as well as our field office.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely point them in the right direction in the description. But if I think that'll be that for today, unless you got anything else.
No, like I said, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I wish you well in your career.
Awesome. I really appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.
I smile.